Lease options are fraught with legal problems, and their scope goes beyond the curriculum for this class. Suffice it to say, your state will spell out some of the terms required in a lease option. It is also a good idea to work with an attorney when developing the lease option contract. If you ever find yourself working with a tenant on a lease option, take whatever time is necessary to make sure that they completely understand all the terms, conditions, and risks involved. In addition, make sure that you advise them to consult with an attorney before entering into the agreement. 199 \n equals IMG 5285 == when a seller accepts a purchase agreement, both parties now enter into the performance of contract phase. This is when both the buyer and the seller fulfill the commitments they agreed to within the purchase agreement. Your job as the buyer's agent is to make sure that your buyer completes each of the steps that lead up to the closing. The success in bringing this contract to completion relies much on the efforts of the agent, that's you. If one party fulfills only some of their contractual duties, or she does not complete them in time, then it is called partial performance. If a party completely fulfills all their contractual responsibilities on time and in full, then it is called specific performance. When one party defaults in an agreement, the other party has the right to sue for specific performance, which legally requires that the other party fulfill their contractual responsibilities based on the original contract. Let's say that 2 weeks into due diligence the house burns to the ground. This has created an impossibility of performance, and it releases both parties from their obligations under the contract. The first step to specific performance, one that needs to take place immediately after receiving the accepted purchase agreement from the seller, is to make the earnest money deposit. Most contracts require this to be placed in escrow within 2 days after delivery of the accepted purchase agreement. The earnest money deposit is usually paid to the title company that will be handling the closing. The listing broker can hold the earnest money deposit in her trust account, but this is much less common. The monies will be kept in a trust account, and it will be linked to both the seller and the buyer. You should make sure that a receipt of deposit is kept in the transactional file. So, how much should be paid? Well, that depends on what is common in your area and what is going on in the market. It could range between 1% and 5% of the purchase price. In slow markets, a smaller amount may be enough to satisfy the seller. 200 \n equals IMG 5286 == It is critical to impress upon your buyer the need to deposit the earnest money before the due date in the purchase agreement. If it is late, the buyer is in default of the purchase agreement, and the seller is within their legal right to rescind the contract. They could even make a case to keep a portion of the earnest money deposit. This is one reason why it is a widespread practice for the buyer to provide her agent with a check for the earnest money deposit at the time they sign the purchase agreement. Once it is accepted, you can quickly get to the title company. This saves you from having to chase down the buyer. Neither the buyer nor the seller will have access to the earnest money until closing, or if the contract is rescinded. The earnest money will be credited towards the buyer's closing costs. What happens if the buyer or the seller backs out of the deal? Who gets the earnest money? It all depends on the terminology in the purchase agreement. You need to know this paragraph by heart, and you need to make sure your client knows it too before she signs the purchase agreement. Usually, the purchase agreement will allow the buyer to get back the earnest money deposit if they are unable to obtain financing, or if the home inspection reveals significant problems with the property. Finding a better property or a change of heart is not considered a valid reason, and they may or may not get some or all the earnest money returned.